What's up, War Eagle War Report family? You got Ike Jones back again, two times in one day. Today, of course, the news is already making the rounds. Robbie Ashford has decided he is going to enter his name into the transfer portal, according to reports from our guy Tobias Wilborn. That is happening. We are working pretty feverishly to get some additional confirmation on that, but all signs point to it being factual. Robbie Ashford leaving Auburn University and headed to the transfer portal. Hopefully, everybody is doing okay today, and we are going to get into the conversation. But yeah, man, he gone apparently. So this has been something that I think that has been in the works for a while. He had been contemplating going to the transfer portal, but thought to be waiting until after the spring because of the transfer portal rules about multiple transfers, and him having to sit out a season if he was going to transfer again, him needing to graduate before that had to happen. And he is not slated to graduate until after, I believe, the summer. So it would be the fall portal window in which he would be most likely transferring prior to the recent ruling that was. There's a ruling that was out there for the transfer portal window, or the multiple transfers, where they were having a temporary injunction for 14 days where people were being allowed to transfer again without penalty. Now, this was really only supposed to be how this injunction, or how this was supposed to be working, is that it was supposed to be for those that were already transferred to a new school. Primarily, it was supposed to be helping out basketball players who are currently on their new rosters, but had been told that they would have to sit a season. So that ruling was supposed to help them gain eligibility immediately. But there are potentially current football players who are going to be trying to take advantage of this. And I guess potentially Robbie Ashford could take advantage of that and play this season, or he could just go ahead and decide to enter the portal now and then continue his path towards his degree and then still be eligible as a graduate transfer, but going ahead and seeing what opportunities are out there for him in the portal now. But again, right now, it does look as if Robbie Ashford intends to enter. He has not officially, I want to make this clear, he has not officially entered his name into the transfer portal, because there still is a lot of stuff going on as far as what that eligibility is going to look like. It's not a surefire thing, but all signs point to that being his intent right now, to enter the transfer portal now. So again, this is not something that is surprising. I think a lot of people connected to the situation thought that Robbie Ashford was going to eventually transfer. I mean, if I were to have, I think I did say it as much weeks ago, that I did not think that Robbie Ashford would be on Auburn's football team next fall when the year came back around. I just didn't expect for him to enter the transfer portal this early. So I think that, this has always been, based upon how last season went, the best move for him is to figure out what the next opportunity was going to be for him, because it was clear, based upon how this season went, that this coaching staff did not place Robbie in a regard that would allow him to compete effectively for a starting quarterback position. So if he wanted to be a starting quarterback, which I do still believe that Robbie Ashford has the potential to be a starting quarterback somewhere, it wasn't going to be at Auburn, right? Like, he just wasn't going to be given that opportunity. So if he wanted to be and pursue football as a quarterback, then his best option would be to go elsewhere. Again, I think the more surprising thing about this is the timing of it. Before the bowl game, not really waiting around till after bowl practice and all of that sort of thing, even going through all of that when he did not see a future for him at Auburn, I think makes sense in that respect as far as timing. But from the other perspective of not really sure how things are going to pan out for the transfer portal going forward in regard to his eligibility for next season. So yes, that is a thing. That is a developing story. Again, Tobias Wilborn is who originally broke this story, and we're still following things in regard to how that's going to pan out for him coming up here down the road as far as his eligibility for next season. Definitely want to get you all's comments because I appreciate the thoughts that everybody has out here. Go ahead and share the video out there on social media so we can get some more people involved in the conversation. I know that there are a lot of people talking about this already. Super chat here from B Will's Forehead says, I just realized I haven't been a patron for the last few weeks. I was wondering why I wasn't seeing any film reviews. Anyways, kind of glad he's gone so we can stop QB arguing. I am here to tell you that we will not stop QB arguing. Robbie Ashford was not the reason why there was an argument about the quarterback. He's just the new name in the conversation. So if your reasoning for being glad Robbie's gone is so that we can stop the argument, then I am here to tell you, you will be sadly mistaken as to whether or not the only way that there will not be an argument about a quarterback going into this next season is if once games start, the incumbent quarterback, who I firmly, and this has nothing to do with Robbie. If you've been watching the show, I've been saying this for weeks now. I firmly believe that Peyton Thorne is going to be the starting quarterback for Auburn next season. As it stands right now, he is in the QB1 driver's seat. So the only way to stop a QB argument here at Auburn University is for him to play well next season, because there's nothing on film for him at Auburn that gives the majority of fans a ton of confidence in Peyton Thorne going forward. So, yeah, if the thought process is, oh, well, now that Robbie's gone, people can stop, that's not a thing. That is not a real thing. I hate to break it to you. That's not going to happen. So yeah, the arguments will continue. It's just going to be they're going to replace it with a new name until Peyton Thorne shows something different on the field that gives people a different perspective about him holistically. There are some people who are fully in the Peyton Thorne camp, and there are some people who don't have the first bit of confidence in Peyton Thorne. So that conversation continues regardless of the status of Robbie Ashford. B. Will's Forehead comes back to clarify, not glad he's gone. It's just the two names I feel I heard all the time was Thorne and Ashford. Again, I feel you. And the Ashford name will get replaced with Holden Geriner or Walker White or Hank Brown. It will be Thorne and whomever. If they do decide at some point in time to go to the transfer portal, it will be transfer quarterback and whomever. That conversation of who should be the starting quarterback is not going to end because Robbie Ashford leaves. That's not a real thing. I think people need to embrace the idea that proof of concept on the field is the only thing that removes that from the conversation. And it's not a unique Auburn conversation. This conversation happens all around the country with a lot of different people until someone, listen, there were people that didn't think Stetson Bennett should be the starting quarterback for Georgia when he won a national championship as the starting quarterback at Georgia. It's a real thing. Jalen Hurts faced scrutiny about whether or not he should be the starting quarterback at Alabama after taking that team all the way to the championship. That's not I need y'all to embrace. It's not a real thing for people to just stop having debates on who should be the starting quarterback. Jalen Milroe was not the solidified starter for Alabama until after he got benched. People were calling for the backups, and they saw the backups, and they was like, oh, never mind. Just kidding. I didn't want to see those dudes. Bring Milroe back. At least he could run. It's not a real thing, guys. So if you think that this was about Robbie, then I don't think that you've been paying attention to the temperament of sports fans, football fans. It's not about Robbie. This happened when Bo Nix was the starting quarterback, and he had been the starter entrenched for 2 seasons. As soon as TJ Finley gets on campus, people are like, oh, where's TJ? I need to see the backup. Bo Nix was the starter. What are we talking about? It's going to keep happening. So this is not a conversation that's tied to Robbie Ashford. And I think that he's been unfairly scapegoated a lot of times in these conversations because people liked what he brought to the football team. And he's had some unrealistic expectations of people for him to make a tremendous leap year over year that wasn't proven to be a thing. I don't think that there's a right or wrong in an opinionated conversation around this, but I think people are so quick to want to be right about stuff as opposed to just letting the athletes play it out on the field this conversation about who the starting quarterback should be for Auburn, again, not unique to Auburn and is not going to end just because Robbie Ashford, apparently, again, all signs point to, will be entering the transfer portal. So looking forward to seeing what happens in regard to all of these things. So again, Thomas Dickey, we need another QB. I don't trust Thorne. This conversation doesn't end. It just doesn't. And again, if you guys have been listening, I've been saying I don't think Robbie's going to be back. I've also been saying that I don't think that Auburn's going to the transfer portal to go get another quarterback, and Peyton Thorne's likely going to be the starter next year. Like, and I know people want to think differently about it, but you kind of just need to face the facts of what they are right now and embrace that reality. And if something changes, great. But if you're pinning your hopes on this potential stuff that's out there in the ether that doesn't actually exist today, then you're setting yourself up, I guess, for a failure in that regard. So I don't know. Justin Thomas says, I feel like he got screwed over this year, to be honest. Well, I mean, I don't know that Robbie got screwed. I will say this. I think that there are a lot of people who did not allow themselves to believe that Robbie could have improved enough to get the starting position. And then he was unfairly placed into negative scrutiny when he was given opportunities to come be an impact player for this team. And they were blaming Robbie for the lack of progression with Peyton Thorne in this offense. And I don't think that was very fair. Do I think that Robbie was given a fair shot to be QB1? I will say the answer to that question is yes and no. Robbie could have solidified this for himself in the spring. I don't think that during the spring, the coaching staff said to themselves going into the spring, we're definitely going to go get a transfer portal quarterback. You had TJ Finley, Robbie Ashford, Holden Geriner, all there on this team. And I think during the process of the spring, Coach Hugh Freeze hadn't made up his mind when he got in here. I don't think. Again, this is not a conversation I've had with Coach Hugh Freeze. We did have a conversation with Coach Hugh Freeze, and his statements on that were continuously, I haven't had a chance to coach these young men. I don't know really what to make of who they are as quarterbacks, what they know, what they don't know, how they were taught. Through the process of spring, his statements were, I think that we can win with any of these guys, and his evaluation of them during that process led him to believe, yes, if we can't get anybody else, I can figure something out with these guys, but I do think that we need to go to the transfer portal to find someone who can be a quicker answer, right? Someone who I feel like is ready to start day one, not who will have a ramp-up process. Now, why I say no, that he, on the other side of that in regard to was he given a fair shot? No, I don't think he was given a fair shot, is that we were led to believe, and I say we as in Auburn fans were led to believe, that Peyton Thorne was that guy ready to step in, play day one, make a difference for this team at the quarterback position. I, speaking for myself, not for all Auburn fans, don't feel as if that was a reality of what Peyton Thorne came to be as a starting quarterback for Auburn. Now, whether or not he can progress and get better in year two, that's still up for debate, and we're not having that conversation necessarily today because I don't want to harp on that for too long. But in the process of that, I was led to believe or to think that Robbie Ashford, Holden Geriner were like 1B and C in that process. And if Peyton Thorne struggled, we'd have a viable option to turn to. I don't know, through the process of a lot of things happening early in the season, it didn't seem to be that Peyton Thorne was that answer, and there was never a pivot in the opposite direction to say, okay, well, let's give Robbie a shot. Let's give Holden a shot. So do I think that was fair? That's up for debate, because I do think that whatever happened to bring Peyton Thorne to be the quarterback here during the spring, during the summer and subsequently that fall camp, led to them feeling as if they need to ride this out and figure out what they can do for that young man to place him in a better position. And as the season progressed, we saw a pivot away from Robby will have a package, Robby will be a guy that will always to it's Peyton Thorne's job, let him go get it. I don't have a problem with that decision. I actually was clamoring for, hey, if you're going to make him the guy, let's make him the guy and just do it. But do I think that that same flexibility, liberty, leash was given to Robby? Absolutely not. But that's kind of a different conversation, right? Because he wasn't the starting quarterback, right? Like, had Robby been the starter and then been replaced, then we could have an even-footed conversation about whether or not that was a real thing and his chances or his opportunities were equivalent. Fact of the matter is, Robby was here in the spring, along with TJ, along with Holden, and none of those three young men did enough in the spring to make this coaching staff or whomever feel as if there was not a necessity to go in and bring in a transfer quarterback. A lot of reasoning as to why that is or what led to that, and I'm not here to engage in a bunch of speculation regardless of what I know, have heard, blah, blah, blah. None of those things are public, so there's no need to enter into the conversation and talk about that. What is known is that it didn't happen, right? So, we can rewrite the history of it with different facts from different perspectives all we want to, but what we do know for a fact is TJ Finley, Robbie Ashford, Holden Geriner, all present during spring. None of the three did enough in that short window of time, short as it might be, to convince Coach Freeze and his staff that they did not need to go to the transfer portal to get a quarterback. That transfer quarterback happened to be Peyton Thorne, and that young man was given, and I will use that word intentionally, the starting position for Auburn University. Whether or not Peyton's play showed enough to say we don't need to go in another direction has to do with the patience of the coaching staff with the product and what their expectations were to begin with. From the fan perspective, it didn't feel like it fit as far as the expectations versus the reality. But that's not a decision I, as a fan, get to make. I am, quoted as saying many times, I'm not there in the locker room. I don't know what happened in practice. I can only go based upon what I saw in games. And what I saw in games was not anything that was overwhelmingly like, oh, wow, this kid is, I see. I definitely see why they picked him over this other guy. I didn't definitely see that. I saw elements of it at times, but I also saw elements and times of talent from Robbie Ashford when he was the starting quarterback prior to that. So, again, that conversation, I welcome it. I don't know that this is a time to rehash that in full. What we are here to talk about is Robbie Ashford leaving, and wonderful young man, and wish him to the best if this does come to be a thing that happens again. He's not officially in the transfer portal right now. I want to make that clear. He has announced intent to enter the transfer portal. And if the timing of this has anything to do with that court case and the injunction that, or the temporary injunction that has been placed, I think it was like a 14-day window, then now is really the only time in which he could potentially take advantage of this. One thing I do want to say in regard to that, while we're on the subject of it, he's not the only young man that could potentially, for Auburn, take advantage of this if they so choose to do that. So I would wonder whether or not there are other happenings or other announcements that may happen with players who are in similar situations to Robbie, who feel as if they're kind of stuck now at Auburn, but they don't have a place in the new reality. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of weeks, because I do feel as if, if this is going to be a temporary thing where you need to hop in during this window, you need to kind of do it before bowl practice starts, which is coming up very soon. So there is potential that others could follow this same path. So we will keep an eye on that as that progresses. Did see another super chat here. I wanted to make sure I get that in. Appreciate it. Ben Bloodworth says, TJ Finley's Auburn legacy is the Georgia State win. What do we consider to be Robbie's? This is a good question. I don't know that there is necessarily, and let me be clear about TJ's legacy is all wrapped up in an overtime, or not overtime, but a a comeback victory against Georgia State, that's not really like a legacy game, right? Like I think that's to your point, or what you're saying is that's the fondest memory that Auburn fans have of him as a starting quarterback, is that one opportunity that he took advantage of in that very limited sample size. So legacy, Georgia State win. That's probably the biggest memory that you have of him. What I remember most about Robbie Ashford was him stepping in last season when TJ was hurt and absolutely giving his all. He had a phenomenal game against LSU. That 4-game stretch at the end of the season, and he was the quarterback during. Now, I think more people will point to Cadillac during that time, which rightfully so. Cadillac is he deserves a lot of credit for that 4-game stretch. But Robbie Ashford was the quarterback during that time. Robbie Ashford had multiple 100 rushing yard games during that time. Robbie Ashford was a primary driving force behind a lot of what happened good for that run game during that period of time when they actually pivoted to an offense that fit his skill set a little bit better, limited his throwing opportunities, increased the amount of times that he was going to run the football. However, I don't know that it's particularly like I don't know that you can build a legacy over a small sample size in that way for a guy who, by all admissions for anybody who watches football, doesn't have the best accuracy in the world, consistent accuracy as a thrower. So I don't know. I don't really even know how to answer that question. Again, I question legacy as a term when you talk about TJ in a 1-game sample versus Georgia State. So it's hard for me to attach legacy to either one of those players who really didn't have opportunities to come in as a starter and build a legacy. So it's a difficult question to answer. Let's see. Probably a lot of comments in here that I have not seen, and I will go through and we'll just kind of parse out the reactions that you all have here. Derek McClellan says, Ike, do you feel good about the depth we have in the room still, or do we hit the portal for depth? If we hit the portal, I don't think I don't think it will need to be for depth. It needs someone to compete, which I don't see. Do I feel good about the depth that we have in the room? That's a difficult question to answer because there are not very many people. The answer to that is one, people who are in the room that have any experience, right? So you have to have experienced players in the room to feel good about the depth. Dylan Lark jumping in here. What's up, Dylan? Can you hear me, man? I think he's having some connection issues there.
Yo.
Yeah, your feed is super delayed, Dylan. We'll try to see if we can get you connected there a little bit better. Dylan Lark, the number one Robbie fan, so I'm sure he's having some thoughts about what's going on right now. Dylan, as you hear me talking here, if you can react in live behind the scenes or give me a thumbs up, then that'll let me know kind of where your connection is. But yeah, do I feel good about the depth we have in the room? Holden unproven. Hank Brown hasn't seen a collegiate field, and Walker White's not even on campus yet. So there's a lot that still needs to be proven as far as whether or not he is, or not he, but whether or not this quarterback room is ready to be in a position for me to feel good about it. There's just too much up in the air. I think we have to get to this spring before we really get into that place. Tatiana jumps in and says, I think the arguing is simply on simply because everyone is excited and hopeful to see Auburn become stronger. We all want what's best to happen for the entire team. Too many fans have been disappointed. I think there's a lot of disappointment that's happening with fans around the product on the field. Again, I think it's a little too myopic to distill this down into a Thorne versus Robbie conversation, because it's not. It's about whomever the starter is playing well enough to not have a question about who the starter should be. And you can replace those names with whomever you want to. That's the reality of what the conversation distills down to is starting quarterback, playing, leaving no doubt versus, listen, I'm a big 49ers fan. There are still 49ers fans, and this gets debated in media all the time about the value of Brock Purdy as a starting quarterback. Still, and Brock Purdy's played well. He had a couple of games where he didn't play well, and now all of a sudden people are like, you can replace him with anybody. This is just a fan conversation, and the quarterback is always going to be a center of that conversation because that's the way that fans debate football. Like it's not like if you're focusing on those two names, then you don't understand the landscape of fandom and how it happens. It's really not about those names. It's about you can swap those names out for someone else. That debate will continue to happen because it's going to be about the play on the field, not the name on the jersey. That's the reality of it. Let's see what else we got here. Chris S. says, I thought that Robby had a fair shot, but now that I know the type of money involved in the portal QBs plus the breadcrumbs left by Freeze, I think Thorne was given the job. Listen, man, Coach Freeze told us that Thorne was given the job, guys. Like, I don't know why this is even a debate. Out of his own mouth during a press conference when asked about Peyton Thorne having the starting quarterback position, not one time during that, and he can come back and clarify if he'd like to, but not one time during that press conference did he say Peyton Thorne has earned this because he's played the best. He didn't say that. What he did say was, I felt it was best to give him the job because I felt like he was pressing. That tells me I feel as if his talent, and whether you believe that it's floor or ceiling or the relative floor of this offense or however you want to interpret that, he felt as if Peyton Thorne and his ability gave the team the best shot at that moment during the fall to start the season with very little ramp to get to the place that he thought the offense could eventually get to. That's what that tells you is I think his potential puts us in a better starting spot. So I'm giving him the job because maybe that will alleviate some of the pressing that he's doing. That's what Coach Freeze said. That's not Isaac's opinion. That is not the War Report pushing a narrative. That is not Robby defenders. That is Coach Freeze making a statement that somehow people have now turned into a thing that didn't happen. He said it himself. That's a fact. Verifiable. I can go pull the video and give you a clip of him saying that. I have it. It happened. So that's not a debate that needs to continue to rage. Coach Freeze said it, and this is not attacking you, Chris. I know I'm being very passionate in my response about what you said, and it feels like I'm talking to you specifically. I'm not. This is a very broad conversation that I feel like is ridiculous, that people have now tried to make it seem as if that's some mythical narrative. It happened. He said it. There's no debate about that. Now, you can decide to not take it at face value and say it means something different than what he said, but that's a decision, not a fact. You've now injected your opinion onto his factual statement. Now, is there an opinion about whether or not that's fair for the other young men in that quarterback room? That's where we get into the opinions about, is that fair for Robby, Holden, Hank, right? You can fall on whatever side of that conversation you would like to. Let's stop trying to remove fact from the conversation, because the fact is he said he was given, not earned, given the starting spot. Again, you can debate whether or not that was the right decision, whether or not he was the best, but that was never what Coach Hugh Freeze said when he gave him the job. He did not say he's the best quarterback, hands down. Never said that. Now, I welcome anybody to point out where I'm lying about what he actually said. Now, again, does that change whether or not the truth of the matter is that he was the better arm, better quarterback? Doesn't change any of those things. None of those things are changed by that fact. That fact happened, though. And you can feel how you want to about that fact, and you're welcome to. Doesn't change the fact. That doesn't make me upset. That doesn't make me think Coach Freeze is a bad coach, or he made a decision and he moved forward with it. We as a fan base should just say, all right, cool, that's the decision that he made. Let's see what happens. Should, but it's never going to be that way. It just won't be, man. People going to debate it, and they're going to say, it's not fair, or they're going to come up with reasons why it happened. Really, none of that, as a fan, none of that really matters. Like, I don't feel like I need to come here and defend what he did or crucify him for making that decision. He's got his reasoning. Let's move forward and talk about what is. What is Peyton Thorne's starting quarterback. What is he going to do out there on the field? I can come here and I can talk about that. What Coach Freeze should have done, I ain't got no say in that. And I'm not about to sit here and debate with people about what he should do. What I will say is the results on the field make me think, man, they're not committed to throwing the football with the guy who's supposed to be the more accurate thrower. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Should we change the game plan or change the guy? When I mean the guy, I mean the quarterback, not the coach. That's a very valid conversation to be had. For me, that's the type of conversation I'm willing to indulge in, and we can debate whether or not we should change game plan or quarterback in that regard, because I do feel like if this is the game plan, and I've said this many times, and there's a quarterback more equipped to execute that game plan because of his physical skill set. But I'm not here to have a conversation about well, you know what the reason is, right? I know what he said. We can pontificate and make up other debates about a whole. That's not a fruitful thing for me. I don't find fruit in that. So I just don't get into that a lot. Another super chat here, appreciate it, from Jonathan Boyson, who says, I hate he is leaving, but I understand why he is. People need to chill. I hope he goes and balls out. The finger pointing when someone transfers. This is a new reality of NIL. It'll be the same next year. I don't think this has anything to do with NIL, and thank you again for the super chat, Jonathan. I wish everybody the best when they leave Auburn and decide to go elsewhere, and that's not going to change with Robbie Ashford. I thought the same of every single player. I think I've only proactively disparaged one young man who left Auburn, and I didn't do that until that young man started talking junk about Auburn after he left. So, listen, I wish all of them the best of luck wherever they decide to go, and I think that all of them are supremely talented in their own ways, own rights. You don't get to be a Power 5 D1 athlete without being talented. Like, you don't lack talent. Should you be a starting player at particular schools? Maybe or maybe not. Sometimes it's fit, sometimes it's environment, sometimes it's opportunity. There are a lot of things that have nothing to do with talent that land people in positions why they don't get starting opportunities and or the bulk of the snaps, whether that's running back carries, wide receivers targets, offensive lineman snaps, quarterbacks ability to throw, whatever. There's a lot of stuff that has nothing to do with talent. Sometimes it is talent, right? Sometimes it's systems. Sometimes it's coach. There's a lot of stuff. And I just think people are a little too quick to jump straight to talent in a lot of those situations. But it is what it is. Again, I'm not here to debate Robbie Ashford's talent with anybody. You can feel how you want to feel about Robbie Ashford's talent, and you're welcome to that opinion. Don't expect me to come here and echo your opinion if I don't agree with it, though, or call me crazy because I feel differently than you. But then, like I said, NIL, I don't know that those two things are connected in this situation, but it is a constant reality with the transfer portal and NIL being what it is, that people are going to leave. All right, let's see here. TK feels like you don't transform in year 4 as a starter. I don't think that, let me be clear about some things, and this is about Peyton Thorne. I don't think that Peyton Thorne needs to transform in order to be effective, and I feel very clear about my stance in regard to this. I don't think that this is a matter of Peyton Thorne needing to be different to be effective. I think he needs to be equipped better to be effective. And I don't know that he was equipped well in this scenario to be fully effective for Auburn. So, um, you know, can Peyton Thorne be effective for Auburn next year? Yes. It's going to take the right kind of equipment around him. You've got to give him the right tools. I said this, or actually, no, B. Will said this in regard to the departure of Coach Harsin. He said that, you know, it's difficult to ask someone to be good at a job when you don't give them all the tools to be good at it, right? If you're gonna handicap them and then criticize them for not being good at a thing, that's not fair. I don't think that it is completely fair. There are a lot of very fair critiques to have about Peyton Thorne, and this applies to Robbie Ashford as well. There are some very fair criticisms and critiques to be levied on both of those young men as far as their play in an Auburn uniform. I don't know that you can extrapolate to that about whether or not they have the ability to be successful when you haven't equipped them properly for that success. Now, there are some young men, and this applies to TJ Finley. This applies to Bo Nix. This applies pretty much to every quarterback that's been out here for Auburn. There are very few. Cam Newton recently has caught a lot of flack nationally about his statements about game managers, and they're having this ongoing debate about the game manager thing. But what Cam was 100% correct about is there are people who are game managers and there are players who are game changers at the quarterback position. There have been very few game changers at the quarterback position for Auburn in the history of Auburn. For the most part, what you end up being or getting are guys who probably should have never played quarterback, and I'm not going to call out names there. Guys who were effective game managers who were like, okay, they were cool. If you put the right pieces around them, they'll do something. Guys who were excellent game managers. And I go into like a Jason Campbell type of guy right there. Like, I don't think that Jason Campbell was a game-changing quarterback. He was an effective game manager, though, when equipped with the right things. And he could potentially make some really stellar plays. And then you've got guys who are game changer types, and those even have levels, right? I think Bo Nix is a game changer type of quarterback, but he ain't like Cam Newton, Nick Marshall game changer type of quarterbacks, right? Like, he just didn't put it together enough for me to ascend him to that place at Auburn. And I do think he was handicapped in certain ways. But like, again, there are tiers of or different categories. I don't want to say tiers because I don't want to say that because you are an excellent game manager, you could never be as important or effective as an excellent game changer. They're just different types of quarterbacks, and certain offenses dictate that you have different types of guys. All that being said, my point here is that I don't know that most quarterbacks at Auburn have been adequately equipped, especially in recent history, going back over the last decade of quarterbacks, have been adequately equipped with the right things to make them successful in the type of offense they were asked to do those things in. So I don't know that it's fully fair to say he's incapable when I've seen him do it at the Power 5 level. I've seen him be effective at the Power 5 level, speaking of Peyton Thorne specifically here in my statement there. When I've seen him be effective because he had the right tools around him. So the thought process right now is equip him with better tools. Maybe he could be more effective. That's yet to be seen as to whether or not that plays out as reality, because that reality is wrapped in the idea that it was the Big Ten. Maybe he sees 3 effective defenses for the vast majority, or athletes that are going to be consistently like what he's going to see in the SEC. Is that but you put the right tools around a guy who I've seen do it, he can be effective. Is that going to be the reality for that young man for Auburn? No idea. I have no idea whatsoever. And again, this is not me making some overture about I've got full confidence and faith in Peyton Thorne. Listen, until I see it, I can't give you that confidence. I can say I'm hopeful. I can give you a lot of hope. I can point to reasons why this could be, but I can't say definitely going to happen that way. I don't know that. I don't know it. So we'll see. We will see. Again, I don't want to focus too much on that, but it is the reality, and there's a lot still left to parse out as we get forward or get closer into this whole thing, as the season starts to come back around for the spring. James Barnett says, it was really nice meeting you at the game this past Wednesday. Appreciate you in the War Report. James, also very nice to meet you. I got an opportunity to meet James at the Rocket City Classic that just happened in Huntsville. Auburn played against UNC Asheville in basketball. Did get a chance to meet him. I met Valencia recently at the Auburn versus UAB women's basketball game. So I always love getting a chance to meet you guys out in the real world. Apparently, I look different in person. He said I look different in person. I met another, what is the guy's name? And I apologize if you're watching this right now because I am terrible with names. I met somebody else at that UAB game as well. I even got his number in my phone, and I apologize, my brother. But I did meet him at that game as well. So always good to meet you all when we get the opportunity to meet you out there in person. So let's see here. P-Pass says, saddest part of Robby is that he was what we need in the post-Walker White era. Post-Walker White era? I don't even know really where that's going, but all right. Let's see. TK says Robby was already banished, so this is just a formality. I've been over it since Moo State. Banished is a strong word, but again, I don't know that this is a surprising development. If you've been, again, I will do my best to never lie to you guys about what I feel is going to happen with certain people and players. And I've been saying that this was the likely path for Robby. And again, it's not because I said it that makes it true. There are a lot of people who said it. But yeah, I think this was the likely path of what was going to happen. If you look at ever since, to your point, TK, the Mississippi State game, when Coach Freeze said, we're going to head in the direction of a starting QB and we're going to give that job to Peyton Thorne moving forward, and this is going to be his make or break. And they went out there and won that game, and then they followed it up with a win against Vanderbilt. They followed it up. I'm saying, like, once we get into that place where we're stacking wins after saying, hey, we're going to make this guy the guy, then the reality is, if Peyton Thorne is not leaving after this season, what incentive does Robbie Ashford have to stay? He's only got 2 years of eligibility left. Is he going to waste one of them hoping he gets a shot behind a guy who was just the starting quarterback for that school, only to potentially have to then go into another QB battle the following season if he doesn't get? That doesn't make sense for him to waste his opportunities and do that. He's only got a limited amount of eligibility, and if he really wants to be a quarterback, find some place that's going to let you play quarterback. Like, that's, I mean, the math is very easy at that point in time. The only math that changes for him is my ability to transfer again is linked to my graduation status. Where am I on my progress towards graduation, or finding this loophole that apparently exists currently, or an opportunity for a loophole that exists that I could take advantage of. So again, the math is very simple. The timetable gets accelerated because of some things that happen that you didn't anticipate. So this shouldn't be some sort of like eye-opening moment for people, but it somehow has turned into that. Let's see. Let's see here. What else do you guys have going on here? Buck Mack thinks that Robbie Ashford would do well at Jacksonville State. That system would fit him well. Rich Rodriguez, coach at Jacksonville State, if I'm not mistaken, has done well with dual threat mobile quarterbacks in the past. I don't think I disagree with this statement that as far as a system fit, that this would probably be a good spot for him to be able to go and play quarterback. I don't know what Robbie's thoughts are on kind of, and this is actually the tenuous spot that a lot of young men are in right now. They're in a position where they have to, and I may have said this on a live, I don't recall. They've got to weigh out the prospects of the reality of starting at a Power 5 school which people have repeated over and over again. Robbie Ashford does not have the talent to start at a P5 school. And that to me is laughable, because I've seen terrible quarterbacks, and Robbie Ashford's not a terrible quarterback. I've seen terrible quarterbacks starting at Power 5 schools. The question is, and this is why I like the statement by Buck, is about system fit, number one. Do they have the system that fits what Robbie Ashford does well? And number two, is it going to be, from a talent standpoint, a better situation offensively than what Auburn has currently? So you have to weigh both of those realities. It's not just about, am I potentially more talented than other people who are starting quarterbacks at other P5s? It's about whether or not that situation and their system and that coach is a good fit for my skills, number one. And number two, am I potentially walking into just another bad situation just so I can be a starter? Because as a quarterback, you kind of, Cam Newton talked about this as well. And this isn't me trying to just big up Cam all of a sudden, but he talked about this recently, and I think Mike talked about this recently on the Wednesday show. Cam talked about one of the reasons why he came to Auburn as opposed to going to Mississippi State, which was the other school that he was considering at the time, was the offensive line. Right? The offensive line was in a better place for him to be able to step in and be effective immediately and not have to worry about, injury and all those sort of things that would damage his potential pro prospects. So it's not really just about system. It's about system and personnel and the talent that's going to be around him. He's got to find the right fit for him. Is that at a Power 5 school? I don't know the answer to that. And again, I'm not out here scouting all the P5 schools because it's not my job. I'm not a football analyst. I'm an Auburn fan channel guy who almost knocked his microphone down. So they will have to take a look at all of those things as they enter the transfer portal. He's going to be in the transfer portal regardless. It's about whether or not there's a situation that makes a lot of sense for him at this present time. And the good thing about this right now for Robbie, if he does get the waiver to be able to play immediately this next season, is that this is the best time to go and find those opportunities out there in the portal, whether he lands on a team. And this is going to be the difficult thing, whether he lands on a team in the fall or in the spring or not, right? He might not find the type of opportunity he's looking for if he's trying to go to a P5 or a high-level group of 5 school in the spring. He might not find that opportunity immediately, and it may have to be in the post-spring situation. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with him. He's got a lot of decisions that he's got to make. Just got confirmation that we will at some point today get an interview with Robbie Ashford so he can answer a lot of your questions. Won't be live, but so if you do have some specific questions that you would like for Robbie to answer, please go ahead and put those. Actually, email them because they're going to go away with the live chat. So if you've got questions, Business at the War Report, hit us up, and we will try to get those questions answered for you as soon as we can. But we will have an opportunity to talk with Robbie Ashford today about his decision to potentially hit the transfer portal. Just got confirmation on that. So be on the lookout today, later on this evening, for that. All right. Let's see. Lot of comments here, and I'm way behind on them. I apologize, guys. I've been talking a lot. Jonathan Boyson says Jason Campbell did transform in his 4th year, and we went undefeated. I'd argue that that's not true. His stats got better, and he improved really steadily every year. I don't know that Jason Campbell was a drastically different quarterback between year 3 and year 4. Not drastically different. I think they changed offensive systems, and it was something that fit better for what he was. Again, I think a lot of times people play the results in these scenarios and not the realities. The results were better for Auburn in that year, and his statistics were better for Auburn in that year. A lot more change than Jason Campbell stepped his game up, right? It's not that linear a connection. Jason Campbell got better and Auburn went undefeated. A lot of stuff changed in that offseason. A lot of continuity happened, which is why the continuity from year over year in a system that I believe works well for Peyton Thorne, if we're going to run it properly, could yield better results. But a lot of stuff needs to change, not just Peyton Thorne playing better, in order for those results to be better on the field for Auburn. You've got to get some questions answered along your offensive line, because you lose. We talked about this a little bit this morning. You lose 3 incumbent starters that had a lot of snaps. So you're going to either be replacing them in the portal with guys that are new to your system. So they've got to figure out how to gel. And you really need to get those guys in the spring so that they can start to develop together and grow. You either got to go do that, or you've got to get some young guys who've been in your system step up that have never played at this level. That's a lot to ask. That's not what happened in the Jason Campbell situation. The transfer portal wasn't what it was, so you weren't bringing in some new guys. You had guys that had been groomed into the system, so you had more continuity along those lines. And you changed offensive coordinators into a system that fit a little bit better. And you brought back 2 of the most dynamic running backs in Auburn history in the same backfield, right? I love the running backs that we have right now. To this point, neither of them look like Cadillac and Ronnie Brown together. Could they develop into that? Maybe. To this point, we don't have that. There's a lot more that happened in that team than Jason Campbell got better. His stats statistically looked better. The team as a whole got better around Jason Campbell as well. And that's not to discredit. I always thought Jason Campbell was a good quarterback. There was never a point in time where I was like, man, this dude Jason Campbell's trash. I never thought that at any point in time. I didn't think he was playing his best, but I also thought the offense play calling didn't make a ton of sense. So I think it's not that linear, but I do see your point. I do acknowledge that that's a decent example. Let's see here. A lot of comments here. Let's see. Rick Cazenave is giving his thoughts on the different categories. Game changers: Sullivan, Craig, Newton. Not sure Marshall qualifies, as the season had 2 once-in-a-100-year plays in the same season. I will disagree that Nick Marshall was a whole problem at the quarterback position. He was a whole, when I think about guys that change game, Nick Marshall was a potential home run every time he kept. Every single time he kept, he was a potential to hit a home run. That's defenses have to change the way that they defend you when Nick Marshall is the quarterback. They have to. If you don't, he will absolutely break your team in half. Again, I'm not talking about results on the field. Johnny Manziel was a game-changing type of quarterback. They didn't have excellent results on the field every season he was at Texas A&M. I don't want to rattle off quarterbacks, but you get my point. Game changers at quarterback are guys who you've got to listen. You can't just replace. Name me another quarterback whose athleticism rivals what Nick Marshall was able to do. Now, he was not the best thrower of the football, which is why he went on to play cornerback in the CFL, right? He didn't have like that, he was Lamar Jackson athletically without Lamar's arm, right? Like Lamar Jackson, another great example of a guy who, as far as wins and losses on the field, he had 3 lost seasons, because a lot of that team was terrible around him. Lamar Jackson absolutely is a game. Now, I'm not comparing Nick Marshall to Lamar Jackson and saying they're the same player. I'm just talking about the results on the field, and those 2 miraculous plays are not what make Nick Marshall the absolute game changer of a quarterback that he was for Auburn University. But a lot of that has to do with the system. You put Nick Marshall in a different system, he's not as effective. The Gus Malzahn system worked for him, and you've got to have the right running back, right? If Trey Mason wasn't the absolute warrior of a freak athlete that he was, you can't go that fast, right? Like you put, and it's going to sound like disrespect to him, you put Boobie Whitlow in that same system, and you got to pull him out every 2 or 3 plays because his conditioning ain't the same as Trey. You can hand the ball to Trey like 3-4 times in a row, and he going to go out there and get busy. Like his conditioning was like his ability, play after play, paired with Nick Marshall's ridiculous escapability, quickness, and then open field speed. That's hard to be able to defend at the tempo at which Auburn was playing. That system with him in the game-changing. Yes, Nick Marshall belongs in that category to me. Now, you are welcome to have a different opinion, and I will not disrespect that opinion. Let's see. James asks, to your point, 3 QBs have left here and played extremely better at other schools. Like, let's run it down, right? Bo Nix going to Oregon, TJ Finley over at Texas State, and I guess you're throwing in brain fart, Liberty, Malik Willis into that conversation as well. I mean, different situations allow different results. And I know we get pegged as the Bo Nix hating channel, so I'm going to say it and people can be mad about it. Bo Nix didn't get drastically better when he went to Oregon. He didn't. He's essentially the same quarterback he was at Auburn. He had different personnel around him, which is that's I think the biggest point that all of the people who called us Bo Nix haters were trying to say. Well, if you put better pieces around him, Bo Nix can flourish. Absolutely, but that applies to like 80% of quarterbacks. There are some quarterbacks who it doesn't matter what the pieces are around them. You're the problem. I don't think Bo Nix was ever the problem. I think that Bo Nix wasn't able to, and this is the problem with Peyton Thorne last year, by the way, as well, let's be honest, wasn't able to elevate the play of the people around him consistently enough. Because his play was up and down, the pieces around him needed to be great all the time in order for the system to work well with him in there. Now, I do think Bo Nix has matured a lot at Oregon, but Bo Nix has kind of just been who he has been. I think his biggest leap to me was year 1 under Harsin. That's when I saw the biggest leap for Bo as far as his ability to process and play the quarterback position. It wasn't when he got to Oregon. I think year 1 Harsin, pre-injury Bo Nix, was the best version of Bo Nix that existed. He took that and went to a place that already had a good offensive line, a good play call. Like, he went and got into a situation that fit him well, and you saw the results skyrocket. Not because Bo went and got better. I think his improvement happened on a bad football team. He just got better quarterback coaching. Again, my opinion. People are welcome to have different ones. But TJ Finley, did TJ go to Texas State and get better? I mean, we can make the same argument for TJ and Bo Nix about the level of competition being worse, and therefore he thrived and was better in those situations. But the mistakes that TJ Finley made wasn't because the competition was too good for him. He didn't have an offensive line at Auburn. So as a quarterback who's not very mobile, if the offensive line in front of you, which is why Bo Nix is more mobile, so not having an offensive line, he's more effective in those situations than TJ Finley could have been. Different conversations, so let's try not to put those conversations together. No offensive line for TJ Finley means probably not going to be a high level of success unless you have a system that allows him to get the ball out of his hands more quickly. A lot of the issues for TJ was about decision-making that he made, and it wasn't because the athletes were so good on the defenses around him, because he made those poor decisions against San Jose State and against Mercer. It was about his decision-making. It wasn't about his talent. It wasn't about his ability to process or any of those things. He made bad decisions. Super talented. Talent was never the issue. That's why he got a scholarship to LSU and was named the number 2 QB coming out because he's talented. Nobody questions TJ's talent. Well, I don't question TJ's talent. Let me not speak for everybody out there in the universe. Same thing with Bo Nix. I've never questioned his talent. Again, we can go pull the tape. I can go show you where I said I think Bo Nix is super talented repeatedly. So not a question of talent. Said the same thing about Robbie Ashford. Didn't really know enough about Malik Willis to say whether he was talented. I thought that he was more legs than he was arm. But listen, he went somewhere, found a system that worked for him, flourished, right? It happens all the time in a lot of different places. Certain things are about fit and situation, not so much about talent. I will repeat that over and over again. Teresa says, I thought it was a foregone conclusion he was leaving in May as a grad transfer. The fact that the rule change only sped it up. I never thought he'd be here next year. Not sure why anyone would. There's not a lot of reasons why anyone would think otherwise, other than wide-eyed optimism and hope and love of Robbie Ashford. I can't point to a reason that would have made a ton of sense. If Peyton Thorne was returning, which all signs are pointing to he is, then what reason would Robbie have to return? Here's a reality that I want you guys to get comfortable with. If you're a Robbie lover, this might hurt your feelings a little bit. I don't know that if Peyton Thorne left, that Robbie Ashford would have still stayed. I don't know. If Peyton Thorne had decided he was moving on elsewhere because of the way the season went, right? Like, had the season gone better and Peyton Thorne was leaving with, Auburn, him having a stellar season, maybe. But with the season being so up and down and uneven, and Peyton Thorne still being allowed to be the starting quarterback for Auburn, I don't know that Robbie would have ever felt like he had a chance to be the starting quarterback at Auburn and would have stayed. Even if Peyton Thorne decided, you know what, I came into this Auburn situation, it didn't work out, I'm out of here, I'm going to leave and go somewhere else. I don't know that Robbie even stays in that scenario. It is what it is. Like, I just don't think that last season went in a direction that left him with many other options other than graduate and get out of here if I want to be a quarterback starting somewhere. Let's see here. Lot of statements in here. A lot of you guys just kind of arguing with each other. Gotcha. Dun, dun, dun. IDK says, let's keep it a buck. If Robbie would have had the opportunity to throw as many passes, it could have been possible, meaning as many passes as Thorne. If Robbie would have had the ability to throw as many passes as Peyton Thorne, I don't know. I think there's a portion of this conversation I'm missing. So maybe I need to scroll back through, but I don't want to wade into all of that. Eugenia says, I saw a lot of potential in Robbie Ashford in 2022. I think the NIL had as much to do with it, with the QB choices, as play did this year. I guess you're saying NIL given to Peyton Thorne had an impact on the coach's decisions as to whether or not he was going to be the starter. Listen, I mean, we can speculate about that. I don't know what NIL money was given to Peyton Thorne. I've heard some numbers thrown out there that have been absolutely ridiculous, that I'm just like, no, that's not real. He was not given that much money. Like, I don't know. Like, there have been some ridiculous, and so if they are real number, I don't really want to get into the NIL conversation. Like, I just feel like sometimes we hear stuff and I don't think we realize what we're actually saying in these scenarios sometimes. But I don't really want to get into the NIL conversation today. But no, I don't know whether or not NIL was a reasoning why. I'm sure it definitely is a motivating factor for the initial decision. Like, because you have to think about this from the perspective of, I'll talk from my perspective I'll give you a real scenario. Give you a very real scenario. I've got a dog. We got a dog probably about 7 years ago now. About 7 years ago, we got a dog. I myself don't have a problem with dogs. I am not a dog person. I know. Listen, I love dogs. They're great. I don't want to have to take care of a dog, but I do have a dog that I've been taking care of for 7 years now. No issues with that. Do you know why I got the dog? Because my wife wanted a dog and my son liked dogs. So I got the dog for them because they asked for it. They said, hey, well, my son didn't ask for it because he was just, he was a baby at the time, but he just didn't have an issue with dog. My wife wanted a dog. So I went and got a dog for my wife. What happened after that was, no, like once she realized how much she had to keep up with dog, this and this and that, she was like, man, it's a lot of work. No, you're keeping the dog. You asked me for a dog, you're keeping the dang dog. So that's going to be our dog, and we just going to have this dog here in the house, and we're going to figure it out with this dog. We're not switching it out for a different dog. We're not taking this dog back. This is the dog. I done got the dog. We got him. Figure it out. That, I think, is a good analogy for what happened with Peyton Thorne. You ask for him. We figured out a way to make it happen. Now do something with him. Do it. No, we're not going to go get another one. This one wasn't kind of that. I mean, he wasn't kind of like the dog I really like. I thought it was the dog I wanted, but not really. No, this is your guy. So do I think that influenced it? Sure, I do. I can see that being the case. But I don't know that the amount, it wasn't about, let me be clear from somebody who's made a similar decision, and I get that that's kind of a very different thing to talk about dogs versus people. It wasn't about how much money I spent to get the dog. It wasn't about that. It was about you asked me for this, and I made it happen for you. You didn't make this happen on your own. You asked me for something. I made it happen for you. You lobbied for it. You told me this is what, all right, cool. Now we have it. Make it work with what you got. Just is what it is. That's how it works in a lot of situations. It's not really always about how much money. It's about I made it happen. So let's make it work. All right. Lot of conversation in here. College Loop. I'm guessing this is Dylan that's in here talking. There was a time during the 21 season where Bo Nix elevated himself to a top 5 Auburn QB all time. Then the Texas A&M game happened. Talking about the inconsistency of of Bo Nix as the quarterback. Again, that was kind of always my issue with Bo, was not that he wasn't talented. It was that it just was never, like, it would happen and then it would be like, why? It always puzzled me how he could revert back into this different person who could throw multiple interceptions versus South Carolina, but be the guy that make those miraculous plays versus LSU. Like, I was just like, what how? How can you be this guy this Saturday and be a completely different guy this next Saturday? That's the thing that always bugged me about Bo. It was the inconsistency, and it frustrated me to no end. It just did. Let's see here. A lot of people agreeing with stuff I've been saying. I do say a lot of really smart things, so it makes sense to agree with me. You know what I'm saying? All right, so let's talk about this. The Halo 2 King says Robbie was too emotional to be a QB. And this is one of those times, I don't want to do a call-in show because I don't really want to argue with people like that, but this is one of those times where I have to ask, based on what? What is your assessment about what's too emotional to be a QB? Why is certain emotion from certain people perceived to be passion and emotion from certain people perceived to be a negative thing? Does Robbie play with a ton of emotion? 100%. Is he too emotional? I don't know that that's a real thing. again, I don't understand why the perception of emotion is negative for some people and for other people it's a bad thing. Bo Nix was a super emotional guy. On the sidelines, he was brooding on the sidelines a lot. He was arguing with people, in the locker room. Like, he was super emotional. Nobody thought he was too emotional to be a quarterback. I don't understand. Like, were there some things temperamentally that Robbie Ashford could improve on? 100%. I'm not here to absolve him from those things. I just wonder where we get into the line that this person is too emotional and this one isn't. Now, I don't know you personally, maybe you draw that same line for everyone, but I'd question if you don't. Why? What's the differentiator between too emotional and emotion lending to passion? Was a very emotional quarterback? Tim Tebow. Super emotional. Heart on his sleeve, crying on the sidelines, slamming the helmet, all that kind of stuff. Emotional leader. Passion, though. It's not really about the emotion, it's how you channel it. Robbie Ashford got benched during the Ole Miss game, right? Emotional, on the sidelines, pouting, all those things that people accused him of. Came back in and killed it after that because he figured out how to channel all that and turn it into something else. I don't have a problem with emotion if you know how to place it in the right space. So is Robbie too emotional? I don't have that assessment of him, but I do wonder those who run with that as a narrative, where do you arrive at that? And what things point to too emotional? Not emotional because you can't be lacking in emotion. So what makes it too much? I question that. Super chat here from Roger who says, I know, please, dude, or maybe he meant to say Ike, please, dude, and left the E off of there. Do you really believe Coach Hugh Freeze is in a box maybe and not willing to change QBs? That is silly. We got PT and we are sticking with him hell or high water. I don't know that I even fully understand what you're trying to say here because I think you was typing a little too fast. And listen, I'm a guy who has typos a lot, so I'm not being mad at typos here. But do I believe that Coach Hugh Freeze is boxed in and not willing to change quarterbacks? That is silly. We got PT and we're sticking with him hell or high water. Is it silly to believe that Coach Hugh Freeze is boxed in and unwilling to change quarterbacks? I don't know that that's silly considering he didn't. What was the play, not play singular as in one moment in a game, but what was the collection of things placed on the field by Peyton Thorne in a Power 5 contest prior to Mississippi State that gave you so much confidence in Peyton Thorne? Was it the Cal game? Was it like that, just that last game-winning drive versus Cal that gave you that confidence? So you've let's forget all the stuff that happened before that. Was it that drive? Was it Texas A&M? Played terrible that entire game. Was it the couple of plays versus Georgia, which were mostly done with his legs, by the way? Was it LSU? Didn't play particularly well in that game. So what was the P5 contest? Ole Miss didn't play well during that game. He was kind of up and down during that one. What was the P5 contest that you said, man, you know what? It's Peyton Thorne, dude. He's going to be all right. What was the game that made you feel that way? If you can point to that game, then I can answer and say, no, that is silly. Yeah, he was sticking with Peyton Thorne because there was nothing that gave me that confidence. So what was the game that gave you that confidence from how he played? I don't know the answer to that. So him being boxed in now, did he have a choice to pivot elsewhere? Yes. Now, so here's what I'll say, and I think you're talking about my metaphor about the dog. I never told my wife she couldn't get rid of that dog if she wanted to. She had, and we've had conversations about it, to be honest. Hey, do you think we should just, try to get somebody? We've had that conversation multiple times, and I've always told her that's actually your decision because I got the dog for you. And she's decided she wanted to keep the dog. Could Coach Hugh Freeze have gone in a different direction? Absolutely, he could have, but he didn't. So am I saying that somebody else made that decision for him and forced him into that? I'm not saying that. What I am saying is part of maybe that decision is this lingering thing that's in the back of his mind that is about, I did all this lobbying for it. Now I just need to figure out how to make it work. I think it factors in. I do. Again, you're welcome to feel differently, though. Let's see here. Gina says, Ike, you're always well reasons, even when I disagree with the conclusions you reached. Listen, this is fair. I don't expect everybody to agree with me all the time. And listen, if you disagree, as long as your reasoning makes sense, then listen, we can just agree to disagree. Trash Panda says, I think composure plays a huge part in being a good QB. It's rare to see. 100%. If you're composed, you can be a good quarterback. So if you're then subsequently telling me that you don't think that Robbie has composure and his emotions make him lose his composure, then I'd ask, how then do you explain Ole Miss when he was completely emotional on the sidelines and came back into the game composed and played well to finish the game out, give us to be in position to win that game? How do you explain all of the performances he had after that where he actually played well enough and we did win games? I don't think that it was a composure issue for Robbie. People can disagree with that. I'd ask you to show me what evidence you have of that. What's your evidence that says, man, see his lack of composure? Like, lack of composure is Draymond Green. Now but like, you're exhibiting that, and it impacts your ability to be effective in games where it's just like he's pressing and doing too much. Lack of composure is actually the definition, the literal definition of what Coach Hugh Freeze said was the reason why he decided to give Peyton Thorne the job, is he wasn't being composed in practice. He had a lack of composure. And again, this is not directed at you specifically, Trash Panda. I have to be clear that I'm not talking about you specifically. I'm talking about the idea of composure. He specifically said that. So what was the drastic difference in the lack of composure with Peyton Thorne and the lack of composure with Robbie? What's the drastic difference from your opinion there? If composure or temperament or emotion is the discussion, tell me where we part ways in one being composed and one not being. I don't know. I don't understand it. So somebody who feels that way has to explain it to me. Halo, who started this conversation, based on the temper tantrums he threw on the sidelines, body language was terrible when the games didn't go his way. Look at New Mexico and how stoic he was. Never too high, never too low. Robbie Ashford being stoic means he's too emotional? Now you're contradicting yourself. Temper tantrums and stoic. So is he emotional or is he stoic? It didn't go his way, so when they panned him on the sidelines, he was emotionless. But you conveniently forget all of the times when he was not playing in games and he was the first one off the sidelines to emphatically greet his teammates when they made good play. Now, so we throw all of those things out. And again, these are verifiable facts. We can go scroll through the Auburn social media and see Robbie Ashford congratulating teammates in games he never checked into, but somehow he was throwing a temper tantrum on the sideline. Or are we allowing how we feel about a player to inform our opinion on them rather than letting the facts inform our opinion on it? Is that what we're doing? Because you just gave, unless you forgot like a noun in there, you gave two very different pictures of the same guy in your statement. Either they're both true, and that means that your conclusion is erroneous, or it doesn't match up with the facts, or you've allowed your opinion to inform what you've preconceived to inform your opinion, not the facts of the situation. Because they panned to the sideline and he didn't look happy in that moment, it must mean, why couldn't he just be thinking about something? He don't know the camp. Like, what? Come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. Like, I welcome fully thought out conversations about, but let's be honest in our dialogue. Like, don't be dishonest in the dialogue, because now you're injecting. So maybe I misunderstand you, and I will give you an opportunity to clarify what you meant there. But that statement does not match up with facts of the situation. It doesn't at all. Temper tantrum, again, if we're saying temper tantrums on the sideline means too emotional, explain then Bo Nix. Because if you agree that Bo Nix is too emotional, then you're consistent, and I'm fine with it. I disagree with your conclusion, but I'm fine with the consistency of your argument. And I challenge you to find a lot of very passionate people who also are lacking any. Caleb Williams crying on the sideline. Like, I challenge you to find those guys that are passionate, but also don't do that same sort of thing on the sidelines. And then tell me which of those guys is too emotional and which of those isn't. His play suffered from it. You just said he got benched because I didn't say he got benched because of his emotion. No. Let's be clear. I said he got benched and he was emotional afterwards and then came back in the game and channeled. That's not what I said. Again, you're deciding what you want to tell me about the facts. I gave very clear. I showed it wasn't his emotion in that game. He was playing bad. If you want to say that's because he was emotional, what's your basis for that? I said he got upset on the sidelines. He channeled that emotion and then went back into the game and played well. So was that emotion good or bad? He played poorly, so he got benched. Not he was emotional, so he got benched. Played poorly. I don't know. Again, like Patrick Mahomes had a whole fit after this last game. Had to go out in the media and apologize. Is Patrick Mahomes too emotional to play football? Play quarterback? He's one of the best quarterbacks ever in the history of the game. He's too emotional? I've seen on NFL films where Peyton Manning is on the sidelines having full-out arguments with players on the sidelines. Too emotional? Throwing stuff. Tom Brady punching tablets and throwing his helmet. Too emotional? I'm again, where do we draw the line and decide this player is too? We can have conversations about talent and ability. When you interject emotion into it as a reasoning, then I need you to be consistent with your standard. That's all I'm saying. All right. Let's see. Antonio says Robby had a chance in the spring to be the starter. Coach Hugh Freeze saw something to make him go get PT. I said this already and agree that he did have an opportunity. Let's see. Let's see. Cameron Kite asked, do you think Holden has a chance now? I think Holden is a cemented QB2 at this point in time. I do believe that that Peyton Thorne is the incumbent in the driver's seat for the QB1. Will Holden have a real chance opportunity? I think that that's still left up for debate. We will see. But I think that Holden holds a lot of cards in this situation because he still can transfer if he wants to. And if he feels like there's an opportunity that is going to be more equitable for him, then he may take advantage of that. So I don't know. We will see. Off script, our guy jumps in and says, my question, was Hugh Freeze the right hire? Good question. The answer to that to me is yes. Hugh Freeze was the correct hire. I think that knowing what I know about the climate around Auburn University and what I know about the direction in which recruiting is taking for this program, that him as a head coach, absolutely the correct hire for Auburn. I don't know that there are a lot of coaches that could have done better in this environment. Has Coach Hugh Freeze been a home run thus far? I'd say solid double. I wouldn't call it a home run. In recruiting, I think he's killing it. I still don't know that last season was the best example of what could have happened for a year one head coach at Auburn. I think it's good. I think it's, as far as the recruiting is going, much better than what Coach Harsin did in year one. Results on the field, as far as wins and losses and confidence in the offense, pretty much the same, if we're being honest. The record, not debatable. But if we're being honest about confidence in the direction of the offense, where that's more subjective, I don't know that the results are worse Harsin versus Freeze, where Freeze absolutely gets the better. We did not get that blown out by Ole Miss. Halo, that's not correct. That is an incorrect statement to say we got blown out by Ole Miss. Stop. You're revising history. Where Harsin falls behind Coach Freeze is going to be in the recruiting standpoint. And I think the lifeblood of sustaining a program is going to be in recruiting. Coach Freeze has shown that he can bring talented players. Now, will the evaluation of that be different? Because, okay, let's look at this, right? Because I know you're my guy. And I know that you follow the career of Coach Prime, right? Did Coach Prime do better in year one than Coach Freeze did? And listen, he had full support of the Colorado administration. So we're not like, yes, number one, more tougher conference, but better record, Coach Freeze in year one. Probably a little bit better financial situation at Auburn than Colorado, but Colorado's just been begging for someone to step in, for people to believe enough in to give the coach money. So from a synergy standpoint, I think he is fine where he is at Colorado. Maybe not resourced the same way, but resourced well enough to go out there and get, depending upon who rates it, a top 3 portal class. Resourced well enough to go out there and pull another will end up being probably top 2 or 3 portal class in year 2, and make some significant 5-star flips in his direction. Resourced well enough to do those things in a conference that is now dead, defunct Pac-12 conference, going into a new situation in a new Big 12 conference that I think is weakened by Texas and Oklahoma not being in there. He can still be a big dog in that conference. So was he the right hire? I think the answer for Auburn is yes. Will he be ultimately a better coach than previous coaches, and what will his success be in the future? Yet to be seen. But my answer today is still yes, Coach Hugh Freeze was the right hire for Auburn University. Let's see. What else do we got here? Thomas Blizzard says, I think Ashford hurt his case when running the football this year. Too much east and west running and trying to get outside, but that's just my personal take. Definitely wasn't helpful for him in the way that he ran the football. I don't know that has anything to do with quarterbacking, though, right? Like, he was come in and asked. So would he have potentially gotten more snaps to come in and run if he had been more effective in those running plays? Yes. Would he have gotten more opportunities to be a quarterback? Absolutely not. Those are different things. So I don't know that he hurt his case for being a quarterback. For getting more snaps, yeah, right. But being a quarterback, nah. Being asked to run is not the same thing as being a quarterback. And so I don't know that hurt his chances there. Zach Allen says, the dude is a great athlete, terrible QB. That's all it comes down to, bro. Again, you could say the same thing about Nick Marshall. I don't think that Nick Marshall was drastically better at quarterback. So I feel like we're again, we start getting into splitting hairs about stuff sometimes. The reality of the situation is that I don't know that Robby ever in his entire collegiate career was ever really placed in a situation where he could flourish at quarterback, ever. He wasn't given a chance at Oregon. When he got here, the system didn't fit what he could do well, and so he wasn't groomed in that direction here at Auburn. And once he finally got a quarterback, or excuse me, a coach that ran a system that could potentially benefit his skill set, he was never placed in the driver's seat to be able to do that. Again, I will say again, spring was his chance to try to come in and solidify that. I don't think he did enough in spring. He didn't. And anybody who wants to argue differently than that has to show me something, anything that shows Robbie Ashford did enough for them to place full confidence in him in spring, where they didn't feel like they needed to go to the portal at all. Because then you have to say the exact same thing for Holt. So that's why I don't like trying to pull any extraneous stuff into this that has to do with anything other than play and experience, right? Because there's a litany of reasonings, and whether you feel like one of those reasonings was higher than another, the fact of the matter is Peyton Thorne was not here in the spring for Auburn. That's a fact. So you had an opportunity, especially once you knew TJ was on his way out the door. And I think that was pretty widely known by most people. It was going to be a similar situation this spring with Robby, where he's here during the spring, but he ain't making it all the way to fall. Let's be clear. So when you know that's the case, then you've got to go and seize that opportunity in the spring. I do think that Robbie and Holden were both hurt by the fact that the spring game, the rain was so ridiculous. So you didn't really get a chance in live action to see how they could perform under the lights and all that kind of thing. I think that hurt both of them. But you can't just erase what happened during the spring because you like a guy. At the same token, and I'll reiterate what I've said here again already, was he given that same vote of confidence that was given to Peyton Thorne despite how he performed? No, he wasn't. But a lot of that has to do with the fact that, yeah, I know you might not have performed well during these practices, but then I also have to go turn on your game film and see the same inconsistencies pop up with your ability to throw the football. And I know Peyton Thorne hasn't performed well in these practices, but I can turn on game film and see him do it well. So I have more confidence in his ability to get there. Is that fair for Robbie? That's up for other people to debate. But the facts remain the facts. Facts are what you did last year from a football throwing standpoint happened. Were you properly put in the position, all that? No, you weren't, but the film is the film. I can see you miss throws on film consistently. Then I see you miss throws in practice consistently. So now I have to believe that this is kind of where you are and you need more time to develop. It's not unfair. That's reality. I see Peyton Thorne miss throws in practice consistently. I see him hit throws on a P5 level in games, 60% passer, right? Like not blowing the doors off of it, but I see him make some big throws in some big spots and do it more often, more consistently. If we're talking about a career 50% passer versus a 60% passer, those are factual things that happened. A lot of smoke and mirrors with some of those numbers. True enough. Got it. They happen though. So I have more confidence that if I put the right stuff around you, you can elevate your play more so than this other person can to start. Now, where they end, ceiling, all those other things, those are relative, and a lot of other factors have to do with those. But I don't think that it's fair to just say it's completely unfair one way or the other. Robbie is not an SEC QB, period. That's an opinion that you're welcome to have, Zach. I don't want to change your opinion of what that is. I'm not here to argue with you about that, though, because I don't agree. Let's see. Let's see. A lot of y'all kind of going back and forth here in the comments, and I'm going to scroll past a lot of this. Talking about Dion. All right. Aunt Robinson, I came in late, but the fans should be ashamed. To be honest, we praised Nick Marshall, Bo, and Sean White. Let's not forget Robbie held everything together last year. No one worked with him, just gave up. Uh, no one worked with him again. He had the spring, so people did work with him. Um, where I think this last year, Coach Freeze, the biggest indictment for me is I don't think that they. I would wonder what the plan would be for this team had Peyton Thorne been injured. I'd wonder what that plan was because it was clear that the playbook was different for Peyton Thorne than Robbie. Again, clear. That's not an opinion. That's a fact. Go back and listen to Coach Freeze talk about it. He specifically said they had two different plans of how they wanted to do it. You can go look at the film and you can see different packaging. Different players were in during the game when Robbie was in here. That is a fact, not up for debate. You can debate it if you want to. You have to ignore the facts. So, did they have a good plan for if Peyton Thorne was not going to be? I think it was all eggs in the Peyton Thorne basket. Robbie's package was it's an add-on, not necessarily a real engine to this whole vehicle. So I don't know what the real plan was for pivoting in any scenario. So to that end, yeah, I don't know that Robbie really got a fair shake in that regard. And luckily we didn't have to come up with that solution because Peyton Thorne was never injured to the degree that he couldn't go out there and play. But was he ever given an opportunity? Again, we have to ignore the spring in order to say that. Now, was the spring fair? Were they always going to go to the portal regardless? I don't know the answer to that. What I do know the answer to is what actually happened, or what I do know is what actually happened. And whether that leads you to answers, I think that leads you to more speculation than conclusion. And people are welcome to speculate in whatever direction they want to, but that doesn't change any of the facts. Speculation doesn't change fact. It just becomes more speculation. Let's see. College Loop jumps in and says Robbie's playbook had Cobb, Michael Riley Ducker, Fromm, Deal, and Amari Kelly. Right. Again, completely different set of players, completely different offense. Everything was different when you came in there. So again, I would wonder or question what the plan. And to be clear, I think that again, that's always kind of been the issue, is that I don't know that Robbie was ever really groomed as a QB2 because his style of play, and this is kind of the issue that you have when you have your backup quarterback so drastically different in their skill set from your starter. And that's what I have been saying kind of traditionally over time, is it's clear when you start to look at who the coaches are bringing in, what style of player that they are catering towards. I'll say this again. Look at every quarterback that Coach Hugh Freeze and Monty and Kent Austin have brought in since their time here at Auburn. You will see a pattern of a style of play. Look at all the wide receivers. You see a pattern in what they want those wide receivers to be and do. The first quarterback that they brought onto this team was Hank Brown. There's no similarities between Robbie Ashford and Hank Brown as far as style of play. Not a single one. There's nothing. The next quarterback that they brought onto this team was Peyton Thorne. There are no similarities in their style of play. Now, Peyton Thorne proved to be a better athlete than we thought, but they're just not similar. Then Walker White was the next person that they offered a scholarship to. No similarities between them. So it's clear the direction that they want to take as far as the style of QB doesn't match Robbie. So it doesn't, either Robbie has to drastically change who he is as a player or go somewhere that wants to be able to cater to his style of play. That's the brass tacks of all of this. None of that means that Robbie Ashford is incapable of playing quarterback at the Power 5 level. I will say it again until I'm blue in the face. You can decide how you want to about that. Doesn't mean that, though. You can try to make it mean that if you want to, but it doesn't actually mean that. It means, because I've seen too many quarterbacks with Robbie's skill set play at the Power 5 level and be successful. Seen it happen too many times for you to tell me that it can't happen at the P5 level. I've seen it. So, and we took flack for this because his numbers don't look the same. And Tim Tebow is not a good thrower of the football. It just wasn't. What? His throwing motion was ugly. He threw a lot of ducks out there. He wasn't a good thrower of the football. He's a great football player, great athlete, was never a good thrower of the football. Power 5, national champion. Prior to going to Oklahoma, Jalen Hurts, not a great thrower of the football. Okay, not bad, not terrible. Wasn't great. Didn't read defenses particularly well. Had accuracy issues, right? He worked that stuff out, and he got some good, too. Wasn't great at it, though. Power 5, though. P5 quarterback. It's a real thing. I don't know if, somehow they, magically changed into a G5 team and then that's a real thing, right? And so we got to stop trying to, we can't reinvent history just because we don't like the story that gets told. Tell the full story. It's okay. Even if it don't align with the narrative that you want. I don't have a narrative to push here. This entire time I haven't pushed a single narrative. I've told you the facts of what happened, and you can decide what you want to do with those facts, but they don't alleviate facts from being real. And so we just got to stop doing that sometimes, because y'all start throwing these things out here that's not real stuff. Again, I stopped reading all the comments, and maybe he at some point in time made sense in his emotional thing about Robbie. I don't know that ever made sense to me. And so maybe you can outline the full thing of what you're trying to say in an email and articulate it, because the little space that you have right there to type in the chat isn't enough. And you email it to me, business@thewar report, and I'll read it. And maybe it'll make more sense. You give me examples. Okay, this thing and this thing and this thing. And I'll see the totality of what you're trying to say. And maybe we can come to a consensus on that conclusion in that way. Let's see. All right. I think that's it, man. I've been talking for an hour and 42 minutes. There's a lot more that, of course, needs to get parsed out here with this whole Robbie Ashford situation. And again, we will have an opportunity as a channel to have some Robbie Ashford content coming for you guys. Look out for that this evening. Once we get that out, we will make sure that we post that, of course, here to the channel. We'll get that out there on the social media. But again, Robbie Ashford has made the decision apparently to hit the transfer portal. We'll keep you guys abreast of all things that are happening with him and other players as they make those decisions. Looking forward to talking with you guys about that. You can continue to have the conversation in the comments, and I will be glad to talk to you guys later in the comment section with all those things. Share the video, like the video, all those things. I'll talk to y'all later. Until the next time, and as always, War Eagle. Peace.